when you conduct these kinds of tests, and it may have occurred, to anybody here who is listening to talk about testing in the context of a criminal forensic case, the first question that comes to mind across the board in every case that has to be answered is the person faking? Are they feigning or malingering mental disease or defect in order to achieve a desired legal goal? So that has to be answered. So we have tests that we use that help us determine whether someone is feigning or faking problems in their thinking.
Okay. And are these tests validated somehow prior to you using them? I mean, where do they come up with these tests?
Sure, where do they come up with these tests? They're validated typically in two different ways. So there's a lot of research that gets done on them before they're put into practice. They're validated in one way, what we call unknown groups. Like we have people who, it's a research study where one group of people is being instructed to fake problems and another group of people is instructed to answer the tests accurately, and often they're being paid in order to, both sides, in order to facilitate motivation to do their job right. In other words, take the test properly or fake. And then differences are looked at. And it's also, these tests are validated on clinical samples. So there might be a group of people who, like a team of psychiatrists has determined is feigning or faking, and then a group of people that a team of psychiatrists or psychologists has determined is not. And then you see how they perform on this test, and you get cutoff scores for different types of feigning or faking.
That almost sounds like there's like an objective measure of the tests, or that it's an objective way of comparing the test results against other individuals in a population. Is that the way it works?
Sure, there are a number of these tests. You end up with objective scores that allow you to make a call on, and there's no one test that's going to answer that. That's why we do several as a rule.
Okay.
Okay.
What kind of validity testing did you do with Mr. Holmes?
Yes, I did several. I did the test of memory malingering. It's often called the TOM. And that's a test to determine whether someone is feigning or faking memory problems for new information.
And how did he respond on the TOM?
He performed normally with no evidence of feigning or faking.
Okay. Now, are these infallible, these tests? Is it absolutely impossible to beat the test?
No test is infallible, of course not. And tests always must be looked at in the context of other test results as well as a clinical examination. So yeah, no test is infallible, and certainly one would never hang your hat on the results of one test in terms of any of these interpretations.
Is that why it's a good idea to do a number of different tests and to do them perhaps at different times?
Absolutely.
Any other validity testing that you did?
Yes, I did. I administered a test called the Validity Indicator Profile, shortened for VIP, and that assesses whether someone is feigning or faking problems with reasoning and problem solving for both words and visual material.
Okay, and how did Mr. Holmes perform on that test?
He performed in the valid, compliant range with no evidence of feigning or faking.
Any other validity testing that you did?
I did the B test, which is another test of whether someone is faking cognitive problems, and he performed in the normal effort range.
So you're talking about faking symptoms of mental illness as well as not trying very hard on the test?
No, this would be the mental illness piece I will leave to Dr. Gray.
Okay.
These would be feigning or faking cognitive problems, like pretending I can't think straight in terms of solving a basic problem, when in fact I can, or pretending or faking that I can't remember what you've just told me, when in fact I can. So it's thinking skills as opposed to psychotic symptoms.
Any indication, any other validity testing that you did?
Those were the tests that I administered.
And what were the conclusions, if any, that you drew from this validity testing that you did about Mr. Holmes' effort and potential faking in the course of this testing?
And my test results, in conjunction with my clinical interview, led me to the conclusion that his effort and cooperation were adequate during testing.
And why do you incorporate the clinical interview in that opinion, ma'am?
Well, I always look at behavior observations. Of course, no clinician is infallible. No psychologist or psychiatrist can always see through people. But having done many evaluations of, certainly a lot of them in the criminal forensic realm, you see a lot of people who do feign, and they fake symptoms and problems and deficits they don't have. So I need to be on the lookout, if you will, for those kinds of behaviors. in order to supplement the test results.
Sounds like you really keep your eye open for this stuff.
I always do, it's part of my job.
In your expert opinion, then, is there any reason that this jury or anyone else should be concerned about whether Mr. Holmes was putting forth a good effort or faking in this context?
In this context, not at all, no.